You know what that is? That is my best attempt at playing the riff to a killer song on the still relatively new Beyonce record, Cowboy Carter, that just won Album of the Year, won Best Country Album. And you know what's special about that riff? It's easy enough for even a beginner guitar player to pick up in virtually no time. I'm no pro guitar player, far from it. Go ahead and nitpick me if I haven't played this riff flawlessly. I'm no pro. I am not going to pretend to be one on YouTube, but that's the point. What if, dare I say it, Beyonce's record inspires fans of hers to pick up live instruments, to toy around with a guitar, and play around with them a little bit? What if Beyonce's record, which is absolutely loaded with acoustic guitar throughout, in the spirit of her 2016 hit Lemonade, remember that? We'll talk much more about that in a moment because it's really an important piece of this story here. What if this helps rekindle widespread interest among young people in playing live instruments like guitar? I mean, that's exactly how you get kids excited about playing guitar, right? Imagine a kid or some Beyonce fan who's 12, 14, 16 years old, picks up an acoustic guitar to try their hand at Bodyguard, my favorite song from Cowboy Carter. It's a terrific song. I don't care what genre, who the artist is, all this controversy about whether it's a country album. I don't care. I know a great song when I hear one, and Bodyguard is a great song. Okay. Um, so, this is how you get kids excited about playing guitar. Is a kid picks up a guitar, tries his or her hand at that riff, and probably within a day or two can at least sketch the outlines of the riff competently enough to be able to tell themselves, I know how to play a Beyonce song. Someone tell me what's wrong with that. I'll wait. Go ahead. Why is that a problem? How is that bad for music? And there are plenty of haters that have, and I'm not necessarily about to call Rick Beato a hater of Beyonce, but he's one of the people that I have in mind when I try to process all the criticism that I've heard about this new Beyonce record, Cowboy Carter, especially in the aftermath of its success at the Grammys. Rick Beato's this older guy. I think he's in his early 60s now, former record producer, loves the grunge era, had some bands in that time, tried his hand at getting a record deal and recording some records, and had a modest success in that realm and as a record producer. But now he's got like almost 5 million subscribers on YouTube if you're a lover of music and you're coming here, you should also go there and check that out. I mean, he's got a great recent interview with the two surviving members of one of my top 5 favorite bands, The Doors, drummer John Densmore and guitarist Robbie Krieger. But he's one of those old school guys that laments the loss of live instruments in pop, rap, and hip hop. And he goes on there lamenting that all the time, nostalgically harkening back to the era in which guitars were more of a thing in pop music. You would think that this would excite guys like him, right? That's one thing that I love so much about figures like Billy Idol and what they were able to achieve back in the 1980s. I mean, that was pop with a full-blown rock sensibility to it, right? I mean, those pop songs, White Wedding, Dancing with Myself, Sweet 16, Eyes Without a Face, Rebel Yell, right? Or overlooked great deep cuts like Hole in the Wall, one of my favorite Billy Idol tracks from his debut record. That stuff was laden with acoustic and electric guitar, right? Much of it just exploding with these in-your-face guitar solos played by one of the greatest living guitarists on the face of the planet, and Stevie Stevens, who I got to see play guitar live on stage behind his head with a smoking cigarette pinned in the headstock as he did so. This is one of the world's greatest talents on that instrument, in Stevie Stevens, and Billy Idol I would suggest is one of the world's greatest talents among pop songwriters. Billy was writing all those songs by himself, sometimes collaborating with Stevens, especially on albums like Rebel Yell. Keith Forsey, Tony James, I think he collaborated with on Dancing with Myself, right? But the point is, he didn't have a dozen songwriters credited for every song he put out. We know that's a thing in today's pop realm. It wasn't. It was all Billy for the most part with respect to his songwriting at that time. Well, those days are gone. anyone with even a passing, interest in contemporary pop, rap, and hip hop and rock, to the extent that that genre even exists anymore, knows that, right? And Beato he'll routinely bring on these legendary session musicians, guys like Tim Pierce, who, of course, he's this great, brilliant, fun to listen to, but patently, it seems, egotistical. Former session musician who's very proud of his accomplishments, and why should he not be, right? I mean, he's played with everyone from Roger Waters, Bruce Springsteen, Glenn Campbell, Rick Springfield, Neil Diamond, Rod Stewart, Stevie Nicks, Ann Wilson, Phil Collins. I mean, basically everybody, right? And he goes on there and he waxes nostalgically about the days when guitar players routinely were summoned to studios to pitch in on pop and rock records, right? I mean, those were the days in which players like Tim Pierce were steeped, and Rick Beato as well. Well, here comes one of the greatest stars in pop music today, in Beyonce, right? With a guitar forward record that she's branding as a country album. And Beato, after the Grammy Awards, I'll link to this video in the description. You can watch him do this for yourself. He's in this video sitting there glumly listening to Cowboy Carter, right? It's guitars galore on this record, especially acoustic guitar, right? And all he has to say about it, of course, is, "This isn't a country record." Really? What do you want, Rick? You guys, like you and Tim, you want a resurgence of guitar and pop, but only on your terms, right? Is that it? It's not a country album. Well, it is now. It is now. Casey Musgraves, another one he listens to. Casey Musgraves' exquisitely gorgeous album, Deeper Well, which was nominated in the Grammy category for Best Country Album, right? He's listening to this achingly beautiful, perfectly written, acoustic guitar-driven ballad that she titled Too Good to Be True. A song cut straight out of the cloth that brought us the Laurel Canyon songwriters of the late 1960s, right? And all he has to say about it, he's sitting there listening to this gorgeous song, written in the aftermath of her divorce from Rustin Kelly, and to some extent gesturing toward that experience in these beautiful lyrics. And again, all he has to say is, "This isn't a country album." Well, it is now. It is now, Rick. And his way of resolving this is I think in the same video, is to pronounce the whole concept of genre as dead, right? Genres have just gone away. Genres are going away. The whole idea of them. But the thing is, Rick, they're not going away. Genre's not going away. But you are. Bye. You're going away. These silver-haired dudes clinging to a bygone era in music, you're going away. Genres are still here. It's not that genres are going away. It's that Beyoncé has done something that for many decades, many singular talents such as her have done, which is try to bend the country music genre to their will. This is a story as old as the genre itself. This is not new. This kind of controversy has been lighting country on fire since before I was born. So Beyonce won this Grammy for Best Country Album and Album of the Year. Like, what is it, couple weeks ago now? And I still have people coming up to me, clutching their pearls. "Oh, can you believe Beyonce won the Grammy for Best Country Album?" I don't just believe it, I celebrate it. I am saying this as someone who is as hopelessly in love with the music of the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s. As I speak, it was just a couple days ago that I bought tickets to go and see Tommy James and the Shondells next week. Okay? I'm saying this about Beyonce's Cowboy Carter record. All right? And you remember, don't you, the background with respect to how Beyonce's troubled, tumultuous, winding road toward country music? Remember the 2016 CMAs when she performs that twangy acoustic guitar story song, Daddy Lessons, from her 2016 album Lemonade? And the scathing criticism and chest-pounding defenses that it ignited at the time? Rolling Stone said of that moment, quote, "That performance was the kind of cross-genre collaboration the CMAs typically love to manufacture, but it did not land well with country fans, or at least based on some determinedly unimpressed faces in the CMA crowd." Yes, you got to remember that, kids. The cameras are always watching, okay? CMT's Alison Bonaguro wrote of that performance, quote, "Sure, Beyonce's new album, Lemonade, has some yeehaws, a little harmonica, and mentions of classic vinyl, rifles, and whiskey, but all of a sudden everyone's acting like she's moved to Nashville and announced that she's country now? If you ask me, this song is no more country than her single Ladies Put a Ring on It." Well, chances are that probably no one asked her. I'm just guessing. Okay? That criticism reflected many nasty sentiments underlying comments posted to CMA's website after that performance, by the way. I'll post a link to that story in the description so you can read some of those repugnant comments for yourself. Most of them I would never dare repeat myself. But it was bad. And TMZ caught on right away and said so. TMZ reported that the CMAs had, quote, scrubbed all references and images of Beyoncé and the Dixie Chicks, now just known as the Chicks, from their website. Their performance of Beyoncé's hit Daddy Lessons was by all rights the highlight of the show. Thursday morning, Bey and the Chicks had a prominent presence on CMAworld.com, but check it out now. It's gone completely. Quote, in addition to its website, the CMAs have scrubbed the women from all social media platforms. They did not delete the women from Snapchat. They only deleted the ladies from CMA accounts where users can place comments. This criticism did not escape the notice of one Blake Shelton, who took it upon himself to weigh in at the time, saying, quote, "People that criticize can kiss my ass." That's what I say, he told Entertainment Tonight. I can't believe people who don't contribute to music criticize music. It just blows my mind. And Beyoncé, tell them to kiss that ass. That's what I would do. TMZ, by the way, later noted that the CMAs have started repopulating its social media with images of Beyoncé and the Chicks. So later on, they frantically repopulated those images to their accounts. The images, TMZ astutely noted, only were posted after they became aware that we were working on the story. Okay? Daddy Lessons, you might also recall at the time, Beyoncé tried to get that submitted to the Grammys for consideration. She was nominated 9 times that year for Lemonade. I think Album of the Year lost out to Taylor Swift that year. But she tried to get it considered within country categories at the Grammys too, and it was rejected by the Grammys in those categories. And this is a rejection that Beyoncé explicitly alluded to in her comments when she accepted these awards on stage at the Grammys a couple weekends ago. Just as a refresher, the AP reported at that time, Beyoncé earned a whopping 9 Grammy nominations, including Best Rock Performance for Lemonade. But the singer's twangy song Daddy Lessons was rejected by the Recording Academy's Country Music Committee, a person familiar with the Grammy nomination process told the Associated Press on Wednesday that Beyoncé submitted Daddy Lessons from her album Lemonade to the country category. The person, who spoke on condition of anonymity because the person was not allowed to speak publicly about the topic, said the Country Music Committee rejected the song. If Beyoncé's song had made it through, it would have been eligible for honors such as Best Country Song and Best Country Solo Performance. Daddy Lessons highlights the Houston natives' Southern music roots. Yeah, Beyoncé's a Texas girl, grew up in Houston's 3rd Ward. Okay? So she is paying an homage to music from the part of the country in which she herself grew up, incorporating horns, acoustic guitar, and hand claps as Beyoncé sings about lessons she learned from her father and former manager. The lyrics include references to the Second Amendment, the Bible, and shooting guns. I mean, what more do you need to be country, right? Got your Bible, got your guns, right? You got your stories about lessons learned from daddy. You're good. You're golden. Country music. Beyoncé performed that track at last month's Country Music Association Awards alongside the Dixie Chicks and later released a version of the song featuring the country trio. All right. And others came up to her defense too. It wasn't just Blake at the time. It was country star Dierks Bentley who told the AP there's something tangible about it, that it feels like a country song. Karen Fairchild of Little Big Town said, Beyoncé has some stories to tell. That's clear on Lemonade, and that's what makes country music great. This whole story, again, of people like Beyoncé coming in and trying to bend the country music genre to their will is not even close to new. Let's take a couple of examples. From like half a century ago, we can go back, and probably further if we wanted to. Remember outlaw country? There's an interesting piece of this where Waylon Jennings, who for my money was, I think, the finest torchbearer for the so-called outlaw country genre. Um, he has a son now named Shooter Jennings, who records music much in the same vein, right? Outlaw country-ish, edgier, rougher sort of honky tonk approach to the genre. But did you know that the 2020 album by Marilyn Manson, and I'm forgetting the title of it, but darn it, but it was a critically appraised record of Marilyn Manson's in 2020. Did you know that it was produced by Waylon Jennings' son, Shooter Jennings? Waylon Jennings, outlaw country pioneer. His son, Shooter Jennings, has made plenty of country music himself and also produced a Marilyn Manson record. That's the kind of open-mindedness, the kind of visionary approach, the kind of spirit of exploration that these stars bring to the genre. Stretching their legs the way Shooter does, producing a Marilyn Manson album. Did Waylon Jennings see that coming in his son? Jennings lived long enough to be perfectly aware of Marilyn Manson. One wonders. I think he died in was it the early 2000s, 01, something like 2002. I think he died. Poor guy. End of his life. Terrible complications with diabetes, and cut his life short a little sooner than we would have liked or thought possible. But Waylon Jennings put out this song in the midst of kicking up all this dust with this outlaw country stuff that he was doing in the early to mid to late 70s. Are you sure Hank done it this way? And listen to the lyrics here, and consider the possibility that this helped lay the groundwork for talents like Beyoncé that came along decades later and tried to kick the doors in on the country music genre in their own way. The lyrics, the first couple stanzas, first couple verses of the song read as follows: Lord, it's the same old tune, fiddle and guitar. Where do we take it from here? Rhinestone suits and new shiny cars. It's been the same way for years. We need to change. Somebody told me when I first came to Nashville, son, you finally got it made. Old Hank Williams, made it here. And we're all sure that you will. But I don't think Hank done it this way. I don't think Hank done it this way, okay? And one of Waylon's favorite stories was of something told to him by an artist who has had a profound impact on innumerable artists from Waylon's generation, Buddy Holly, who Waylon was fond of telling this story. He looked him in the eye and said, Waylon, you are not a hillbilly. Buddy saw an edgier, more visionary talent in Waylon Jennings than merely just that of yet another honky-tonker. And those words came to haunt Waylon for the rest of his life, certainly the rest of his career. You know why? Because Waylon was playing bass for Buddy Holly on Buddy Holly's Winter Dance Party Tour in January and February of 1959. When Buddy Holly chartered a plane because the bus was pissing him off, it was this old broke-down bus that they're riding through the chilling ices of a Midwest winter in the upper Midwest. He had just done a show in Iowa, Cedar Lake, Iowa. Decides to charter a plane that I think was made in 1947. And there's a guy named J.P. Richardson who's supposed to board this flight along with Waylon and Buddy. And J.P. Richardson, of course, is known as the Big Bopper, had a big hit called Chantilly Lace that I loved as a kid, obsessed with the oldies stations I would listen to on my mom's radio. Because he was not feeling well at all, figured, I really don't know that I'm going to make it through this laborious, frigid bus journey from Iowa to Minnesota, where their next show was. So he asked Waylon Jennings if he could have Waylon's seat on this little charter plane. And Waylon agreed. And everyone aboard that plane crashed on February 3rd, 1959. Waylon was supposed to be on that plane. Waylon, who was told by Buddy Holly, you are no hillbilly. You think about how those words would have haunted Waylon. You want to talk about haunting words? Rolling Stone years later recounted the following, quote, when Waylon Jennings told Holly that he was going to take the bus, Holly jokingly told him he hoped the bus broke down. To which Jennings replied, I hope your old plane crashes. Jennings later told CMT, "God almighty, for years I thought I caused it." Waylon took Holly's admonishment that he was no hillbilly so seriously that he invented his own subgenre within country, outlaw country, right? With guys like Chris Christopherson, Willie Nelson, Tom Paul Glaser. I mean, even Johnny Cash had his own leanings toward outlaw country. There are plenty of others who took this mantle in their own ways, put their own stamps on it. God forbid someone try to put his or her own stamp on country, right? He did so well with this, flouting the Nashville establishment, recording their records outside of Nashville because of that, trying to break free of the Nashville establishment sound with its simpler songs, its guitar and fiddle, its armies of session musicians, right? It worked so well that their 1976 record, by they, I mean, not just Waylon, but in conjunction with Willie Nelson, Jessie Coulter, who went on to become Waylon's wife and is Shooter's mom, Tom Paul Glaser, they came out with this album in 1976 called Wanted the Outlaws. It became the first country record to sell 1 million copies. So maybe Buddy Holly was onto something by encouraging Waylon Jennings to sort of, I don't know, change the goalposts a little bit with respect to what country music is or can be, bring his own flourishes to the genre. And when you hear that smoking electric guitar slice into the song Honky Tonk Heroes about 1:20 in, by which point it's to that point only been an acoustic guitar and fiddle song, very deliberately so, to set up the impact of the electric guitar that smokes its way into that song, you know you're hearing something daring, fresh, new, and uncompromisingly visionary. But it wasn't just Waylon who was trying to bend the genre of country to his own will. There was also a lesser known but also remarkably talented guy named Charlie Rich, who was interviewed by Terry Gross in 1992 on NPR, of course, and said, quote, "I liked country music, but it wasn't all that I liked. I just can't seem to stay in one particular thing because I feel like it kind of makes me stale if I try to stay in a particular category. So I venture out in a lot of new things. Some work, some don't, just like Beyoncé is, right? Rap and hip hop might not be the only thing she's interested in. Maybe she's interested in venturing out and broadening her own creative horizons, right? In doing so. Allmusic.com, my favorite music site, which I say here all the time, and you should go there today now, right this minute, describes Charlie Rich's aesthetic as, quote, willfully blending genres, fusing country, jazz, blues, gospel, rockabilly, and soul. When he recorded some demos for Sam Phillips of Sun Records fame, Sam rejected them, even though he was the one who invited him to send in some demos, as, quote, too jazzy. But that jazz sensibility led Charlie Rich to put out a beautiful, brilliant record, I think comes out in 1973, called Behind Closed Doors. It's a masterpiece from start to finish, and that jazzier sensibility that he brings to the country genre with that record comes to be known as its yet another subgenre, countrypolitan music, right? I don't know what subgenre we assign to Beyonce's Cowboy Carter, but maybe we'll figure it out if we think hard enough and brainstorm together. Okay, but countrypolitan, this was Charlie Rich trying to bend the country music genre to his will, right? That record, interestingly enough, got him noticed as Entertainer of the Year at the 1974 CMAs. The next year, 1975, and if you have any clue who Charlie Rich is, you're grinning as I begin the story because you know what I'm about to recount. He's on stage at the CMAs presenting the 1975 Entertainer of the Year award, right? He very sort of, in a haphazard manner, tears open this envelope, takes the card out, which has the name of the winner of the 1975 Entertainer of the Year at the CMAs. Well, it's John Denver, and when he sees that, he says nothing. Instead, he pulls a cigarette lighter out of his pocket and on live television lights it on fire in his hands. And then the camera switches to John Denver, who's very, very, at that point, nervously giggling as if to say, what the hell did I just watch? Did I just win something, or am I going to be burned at the stake at that? Thankfully, John Denver was remote on satellite. It wasn't present. Who knows what would have happened to poor John? But that action by Rich, this guy who himself is trying to bend the country genre to his own will, as I said, was widely interpreted as a protest against the more pop sensibility that John Denver was bringing to the country ish albums that he was putting out at that time. Now, Charlie Rich denied that, including in that interview with Terry Gross, which I should also link to in the description. He said that wasn't the case. He wasn't protesting John Denver. But the mere fact that that was the widespread assumption indicates that this kind of quarrel as to who gets to be the authority, who defines what country music is or isn't, who gets to say what country music can and cannot be, has been going on for a long time. I wasn't born yet when Rich did this. I wasn't born yet when Behind Closed Doors came out. I wouldn't be born for years, even though my two tiny daughters believe that I'm ancient in history. I at least wasn't born when Charlie Rich lit that card on fire at the 1975 CMAs. Okay? It would still be years before I made my debut into the world. So again, there's nothing new about what Beyoncé has done here by bursting through the doors of the country genre and trying to bend it to her intentions. Okay, what's exciting to me is her embrace of live instruments like guitar as one of the biggest and most celebrated names in pop, and doing so with nice, simple riffs like this that you can pick up easily. I mean, it's just 4 chords. All you got to do is learn 4 chords, right? It's E minor, D, right? A sus2 and A. That's it. That's it. I mean, you don't have to be, Eddie Van Halen to pick that one up. Far from it, right? That's making live instruments, acoustic guitar-driven music accessible to the legions of Beyoncé fans out there. Some of whom are going, I guarantee it, be intrigued. They're going to be intrigued by the presence of live instruments on a Beyoncé record, acoustic guitar throughout. It's not just a song as it was the case in Daddy Lessons. It's the whole record this time. Dolly Parton makes an appearance. Miley Cyrus drops by. Willie Nelson, Linda Martell, black pioneer in country music, especially for female artists, right? She's on the record directly addressing the controversy around genre in some monologues that she has on the album. This, to me, might have the potential to change the direction of hop rap and of hip hop rap and pop music, in ways that maybe echo what Everlast did with songs like "What It's Like" back in the '90s, right, when he brought live instruments into his brand of rap and hip hop. But Beyonce, big as Everlast was, her profile is far bigger than his ever was, and therefore comes with a greater chance of causing a much bigger earthquake than Everlast did by incorporating live instruments into rap and hip hop as he did at that time. And it's catching on, man. I mean, just the other day, Charlie XCX posted on Instagram the following: "What if I made a record with guitars or strings or both?" And she alludes to Lou Reed in this post of Velvet Underground fame. Take a Walk on the Wild Side. His late 70s records are among my favorites ever. Bells and Street Hassle and all that beautiful stuff. The Blue Mask, one of the most epic, scorching rockers, the title track of that album ever recorded, in my opinion. With that killer band he had at the time. Lana Del Rey just last year teased a country record. Do you remember this? Before we learned that in May of this year, she's coming out with a new album that will be called The Right Person Will Stay, she was teasing a country album, at least a record she was branding or promoting as country, called Lasso, that she said was going to come out in September of last year. It never did, and now we have this record called The Right Person Will Stay, which I am unendingly, gleefully excited to hear. I can hardly stand my anticipation of this record. As anyone who's been here for a while knows, I'm a total shameless Lana Del Rey stan. Okay. Post Malone, remember, he earned 4 nominations at the CMAs this year for his first full-fledged country album, F1 Trillion, right? But again, the genre-bending business aside, this trend of weaving more live instruments into pop, rap, and hip-hop is what's so exciting to me about Beyonce's Cowboy Carter record. And this is a trend that has been initiated or furthered along by the likes of Chappell Roan. I mean, the first short I ever posted on this channel was my review of Chappell Roan's, what is it called? The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess, came out in September of 2023, because I just couldn't believe how the full-throated manner with which she was embracing 80s pop, weaving acoustic guitar into this pop album, electric guitar solos. You hear acoustic guitar in Red Wine Supernova. There's a terrific guitar solo on Pink Pony Club on that record. Um, and Rick Beato, to go back to him, just recently posted a video on his channel about how it's the return of the guitar solo. Dude, where have you been? That record's a year and a half old, man. The guitar solo has been returning, bro. I mean, have you listened to Olivia Rodrigo's Guts album at all? I mean, do you realize that she made that record with the same person with whom Chappell Roan has been collaborating on her work? Daniel Nigro, the co-songwriter on those songs on both records, the producer of both records. Didn't he just win Producer of the Year at the Grammys? Maybe he has a hand in the resurgence of guitar and guitar solos in contemporary pop music. Just listen to, like, Get Him Back on Guts, a song that my 5-year-old daughter relentlessly requests when we're in the car on the way to school. There's this big, fat, meaty guitar solo on there, one like we might have heard on, say, the records of Sheryl Crow in her 1990s prime. There are nods there to 1970s pop rock and glam rock. That was certainly Cheryl's thing back in the day, right? And it's again, those influences are present in the work of Chappell Roan and Olivia Rodrigo, both of them brilliant in my view. So with Cowboy Carter, Beyoncé is both participating in and helping to further a trend that's been underway for a while, and now might proceed more aggressively in this direction, thanks to the release of Cowboy Carter. Um, maybe we more frequently hear live instruments in pop, hip hop, and rap, especially guitar, maybe strings, as Charlie XCX is suggesting she might do. And old guard music figures like Rick Beato, or for that matter Tim Pierce, in my view, they lament the loss of this kind of music in pop. Well, then, therefore, in my view, they should be kissing the ground that Beyonce walks on, for helping further along this trend with records like Cowboy Carter. So, I guess as the old joke goes, thank you, Beyonce. And maybe that's perhaps something that more frequently should be at the tips of the tongues of folks like Rick Beato and Tim Pierce, who say they want to hear more guitar and maybe have a return to session musicians, like the days that they knew from decades ago. Maybe that should be their sentiment, not so much, this isn't a country album. Okay, come on, dude. I'm all for it. Like I said, I don't just love it, I celebrate it. I'm thrilled to be hearing this trend in pop, in rap, in hip hop, and personally, I hope to hear much more of it in the years ahead.